Madison, welcome to the podcast. I'm super excited to chat with you today. Thank you so much for being here. For people who aren't familiar with you and all the incredible work you do in the S&C space, would you mind filling them in a little bit about who you are and all the great stuff you've got going on down there in Florida now?
Yeah, so Madison Peele, happy to be here. I work at Florida State University with the indoor volleyball team and the beach volleyball team, serving as the main sports performance coach with them. Currently, I am in charge of the intern curriculum and kind of helping navigate all of that with the interns and the GA. So that's been a really cool and rewarding opportunity. This is actually my second stint at Florida State. I was a graduate assistant here, and after graduating, I left, got a job out at University of Southern California, and then just recently got hired back this past June. So it's kind of cool to have a little full circle moment and come back home in a sense.
We love that for you, Madison. And it sounds like a lot of your work focuses around volleyball, which is absolutely booming as a sport right now. And I've really grown a liking to watching the sport because it's so fast paced and you never know what can happen. It just, some of these rallies go on and on and on for what feels like forever sometimes. It's just incredible to watch. And I think there's something about sports that I know I myself would suck at. And just the reactivity that gets on display with volleyball, and the endurance demand too of going 4 or 5 sets, 20 plus points back and forth each side. Like, it is amazing to me to watch that. How did we end up in this kind of volleyball specific role? Because that's something I see popping up more and more in the S&C world, and I know a lot of people are trying to get to where you're at. So I'm curious, how did we get here? Do you have a background in volleyball yourself, or
It was actually kind of by accident. So during my time as an intern and a graduate assistant, I was open to working any sport. And even when I was applying for my first full-time role at the completion of my graduate assistantship, I was not pigeonholed to any sport. I just wanted to work and I wanted to do a good job. So I was open to doing anything, whether that was softball, track, swim, tennis, it didn't really matter. When I started my internship in my GA position down here at Florida State, I was the first time I ever worked with a volleyball program and a beach volleyball program, and it was so much fun. So by the end of my GA position, I had worked with the beach volleyball team for 2.5 years. And in the back of my mind, I was like, if I could like get a job somewhere working with beach volleyball, that would be so much fun. But I also knew that it was a growing sport and there wasn't a lot of positions, that were gonna offer a full-time role working with beach volleyball. During my time as a GA, I also worked with the women's soccer team, and I thought that was a really fun sport to work with, so that was also in the back of my mind of, "Okay, if I had to pick a perfect world scenario, I'd love to work beach and soccer." And when the USC job became available, I was applying to everything. I actually didn't even know what the sports were gonna be. I just applied to it. Didn't really know a lot about the university because 'cause I'm an East Coast kid and it's all the way out on the West Coast. But I applied, told my director that "Hey, I sent in an application for USC, don't really know what it's about." She reached out to someone there that she knew, and then she came back to me and said, "It's for beach volleyball and soccer." And I was like, "Oh, fire me up." That's super exciting. That's exactly what I wanna do. So, put my nose to the grindstone and worked my butt off for that interview process and then ended up out there with soccer, beach, and tennis.
as you mentioned, working with beach and indoor volleyball, which
Yeah.
on one hand, it's the same sport, it's volleyball, but on the other hand, they're so different.
Oh,
What
yeah.
goes into your line of work and process around S&C and so on that way, and even some of the sports science elements, if you will, around the beach versus the indoor? Because, I guess we could say it's all volleyball, but those that play the sport would tell me that's certainly the wrong way to look at it.
Yeah, I mean, the energy system demands are gonna be a little bit different for both to begin with, just kind of the rally times, the jobs that are, kinda demanded on the different courts and the different surfaces. In indoor, there's obviously more players on the court, it's a little bit bigger court. Beach, it's a smaller court size, but you've only got 2 players on it, so their rally times can be a little bit longer, the demands of certain movement qualities can be a little bit different, and they're playing on a movable surface, so that's a different beast in and of itself. The other really tricky thing with the beach as opposed to the indoor, you know what your schedule is gonna be. You know what time of the day you're gonna play, what the lead up looks to it for serve and pass and all that good stuff. For beach, you don't really know what's gonna happen. You're kind of at the mercy of the elements. This past weekend, we were supposed to play at 8 AM and 2 PM. But then we had bad weather rolling in on the beach, so we're like, "Oh, we're gonna play to decision rather than completion, to try to move these matches a little quicker." So then people had to start warming up. There was one team that wasn't even at the beach yet, so they're calling them, telling them to come down from their hotel, like, "We gotta get this show on the road." We had girls warming up for a match, and then they got told last minute they weren't gonna play, so it's a lot more unpredictable environment, whether you're getting ready to play or with the surface that you're playing on. So the adaptability piece is a big component there. From a sports science standpoint, it's kind of built out based on the team I'm working with how coaches wanna communicate, what's gonna work best for their decision-making process, all of that good stuff. I don't run the same system with both just because both head coaches are different and they kind of require different needs and wants, just to make sure that their system is kind of moving appropriately in the direction they wanna go.
And as you mentioned, it sounds like controlling chaos is a key theme of the beach volleyball side of things and just learning to navigate the uncertainties and almost problem solve on the fly that way, which is something that seems to come up in so many of these podcasts that we do is apparently athletes nowadays have a difference in their ability to solve problems than athletes maybe 5 or 10 years ago that way. Is there a certain almost like psychological element of the programming that you give to the beach volleyball athletes to try and help develop some of these adaptability, problem solving, think on the fly kind of skills that sound like they kind of lend themselves to success within the sport?
Part of the day one standard the girls learn when they come in is you're responsible for setting up and breaking down your session. I don't set up or break down anything. So you have to know, based on what we have planned for the day, when you walk in the room, what do you need? What bands do you need? How does the room need to be set up? What bars do you need? How should things look and how should things flow? I'll tell them like maybe week one, day one, what they need for that phase. But after that, it's up to them to kind of remember and problem solve for the situation at hand. Same thing goes if we're sharing the room with another team. They have to kind of learn to adapt and be able to keep our same structure and standard while sharing a space with another team without having to rely on me to essentially hold their hand through the process. But those are things that are talked about in our standards and expectations meeting day one that we have. On our conditioning side of things, there's definitely a lot of different scenarios that I'll throw at them where it makes them think on the fly. They have to remember key details, and the expectation being, yes, I am your strength coach, but you're also here to kind of learn and retain information. That's how we continue to progress and grow as an athlete. I can't just sit here and hold your hand and remind you every single week. If we had 3 sets and you haven't paid attention for the first 2, we've kind of wasted our time, and I'm not gonna give you extra reps if you're not gonna be locked in from the get-go. So they kind of all know that that's the set standard and expectation across the board. The other piece is we have a lot of girls that wanna play pro after college, and when you go pro beach volleyball, there's not a lot of money in it. You're kind of doing your own lifting, your own nutrition, all of that stuff. You're doing your own scheduling for flights with you and your partner. So teaching them to be a little bit more self-sufficient and problem solve now while they're in college helps them after college if they choose to go that route.
That element that you just mentioned, I'm gonna bring up the travel first just because that hits home to this past weekend, very, very hard right now. It is unreal how much some of these factors that we don't even think about in the performance conversation impact performance, recovery, all these other things that way. So to give the full story of this past weekend here, Sunday night, we were gonna fly back from Arlington. I was flying to Raleigh. Some other members of our team were flying to Charlotte, just different parts of the state where we live. My flight ended up getting delayed 3 hours. Their flight got canceled entirely, and we were supposed to have freak storm of the century with tornadoes and all kinds of crazy stuff today. It was gonna be the apocalypse. So they weren't even gonna be able to get back home to Charlotte until tonight at, like, 10 or 11 if they stayed and if that flight even went as planned. So they got in the car and they drove from
Oh,
Dallas
wow.
to Charlotte just overnight straight. And I mean, hats off to them. I have nothing but respect for people who are literally able to just on the fly figure out a plan and just go and execute it. But when it comes to sport performance that way, that's an element of it, right? Like, if you can't figure that stuff out on the fly, like, you might not even be competing because you didn't even get to the arena to play that day, unfortunately. So, all these other factors and variables that you just outlined so eloquently that way, it's like this stuff can impact performance just as much as how much weight you throw on the bar the day before, if not more than all of the other variables that I think a lot of people often think about in S&C. So I think preparing athletes for some of those unforeseen situations that are going to arise in the future, just the reality of sport in 2026, I think that's imperative to their success long term in the sport and beyond the sport.
And that's a common conversation that we'll have. Like, you're never gonna have the most perfect scenario when you're traveling on the road and things like that. At home, like, yes, you have all the controllables and you can kind of dictate things to work in your favor in a sense. When you're on the road, you don't get that luxury. So teaching the girls that, hey, if we have this one day where things don't go according to plan, our sleep gets thrown off, our schedule gets messed up, it's okay. As long as we have done the right work to prepare for this one day of things being off our routine, like, it's not gonna affect us that much. It's okay. This one day of a lack of sleep is gonna be fine if you've already built up that bank leading up into it and had your schedule leading up into it.
Absolutely. Now, earlier you mentioned about the warm up and how sometimes you have plenty of time for it in beach volleyball, and other times it's very condensed that way. Walk me through the typical warm up that you have your athletes go through for beach that way, because I've seen warm-ups go all over the place. I've seen some people that are still just doing static stretching. I've seen others that demonize static stretching and they're doing dynamic flows. I've seen other people literally using oxygen saturation monitors to kind of more optimize the warm-up, if you will, from an actual tissue oxygenation standpoint. I'm seeing so many different approaches to the warm-up, and I'd love to hear kind of how you've taken all of that and put it into a framework that makes sense for the beach volleyball athletes that you work with.
So before I got here, it's been happening for a very long time from when I was an intern to a GA. This program has really liked primers. So doing a quick little lift or a primer session before going into their ball warm up on court. So when my coach came to me and said that she still wanted to kind of implement this season, I said to her, my biggest concern is we can't easily repeat it at every location that we go to. When we go to NCAAs, you're literally on a beach, you're staying in condos, there's no gym near you, there's no university near you, nothing. And when you're at NCAAs, you don't wanna create a new routine. You wanna just kinda stick with that routine that you have that you've kinda solidified throughout the season. So I did some looking around, did some talking to some folks, and I actually found the Hydro shorts, that Coach Johnny, my director, uses with the women's soccer team. So, talked with their reps a little bit, talked with Johnny a little bit on how they utilize it and just the different options with them. So we decided to invest in, like 14 pairs of them, and we have enough that could, facilitate our starters to all warm up. And we kinda just share the shorts around the team as needed. But we use those, and the warm up honestly looks a little bit different depending on the situation that's at hand. So again, like I had said, we don't really know what we're stepping into after we warm up for that first game. If we know the first game's gonna be at 8 AM, I'm not gonna have them wake up super early to run through a 30-minute primer. It would make more sense for me to let them sleep a little bit longer, maybe get some extra treatment in, and then we go to the courts and I do a 15-minute deal before they start throwing with their partner. So if we're doing that, then it's a little bit of group mobility with the shorts on. They'll run through a couple sets of the bodyweight squats with the shorts following the protocol that we have. After that, we'll run through a dynamic warm up as a team, and then they get into their throwing. In between, depending on how much time we have, sometimes we run the same lineup, sometimes we don't. It's a constructive conversation going on all the time. I'm always communicating with the girls, asking them what they need, what's gonna make them feel the most ready, and we've gotten to a point where they understand their bodies really well, just from all the work and the conversations that we've had in the fall leading up to now. So them telling me that they need a shorter, more condensed warm up, I'm able to kind of problem solve that in my head of what that looks like. So I'm not just leaving the athlete to their own devices to kind of figure it out. I'm giving them guidance, creating a little bit less stress for them so they can just focus on the task at hand. If someone needs a little bit longer warm up, they let me know kind of what they need. If they need to be a little bit more amped up, they let me know that, and we kind of supplement in some other things as well. If it's a more condensed version, sometimes they'll just put the shorts on, run through some light mobility, and then they'll get into their ball warm up while wearing the shorts. So they'll do their throwing, their peppering, any stationary stuff with the shorts on. They'll take them off, and then they'll get into their more dynamic movement. So it kind of just determines, or the warm up is determined based on what the athlete needs, rather than having just one structured protocol all the time.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. It's like we have a general framework, but individualized breakouts based on what the specific athlete needs. And
Definitely.
I know Warren is gonna love the Hydro shout outs. It's incredible the applications of BFR in the performance side, the recovery side. I feel like that is kind of the next big thing that, we're seeing enter the space right now, and I'm excited because I've got some air bands on the way coming this week, and I can't wait to kind of play around with that more on myself that way as well, because I truly think there's something unique about the application of the BFR to this. And you also mentioned about the throwing element, and that's something that I'm seeing gaining a lot more attention for volleyball athletes is this concept of, hey, like they're overhead athletes, like the volume of swinging that they do, the demand on the shoulder that they place when they hit the ball, literally when they're in the air nonetheless. It's this kind of unique open chain from a lower extremity standpoint because their legs are off the ground, but upper extremity twisting rotation, but it doesn't really start from the feet on the ground like so many of these other overhead sports do. It's very unique, and I'm not explaining it the best by any means, but just watching the sport over and over again, it makes you realize like this type of open chain overhead motion that outside hitters in particular do over and over again is so drastically different than what we see in other overhead sports like baseball, softball, tennis, etc. that way. So what does that throwing component look like for you all? Do you just give them a football and kind of let them, chuck it back and forth a little bit, or how do you incorporate literally throwing into a warm up for a sport that doesn't necessarily directly involve that, if you will?
So indoor, they will throw footballs time to time, kind of just depending on maybe what mechanical structure they're working on. If they're working on trying to dissociate the shoulders and the hips a little bit to get a little bit more rotational core, trunk activation as they're throwing, so that it's not placing all the demand on the shoulder. They're using part of the body as well. Indoor will kind of take that route. Beach, we tend to work with limited equipment just based on the environment we're in. So any sort of throwing warm up they're doing with the ball, or we'll break out some tennis balls and they'll do different drills with those. But everything's queued up in a way from a mechanical breakdown of how they should be attacking the ball.
So it sounds like you mentioning mechanical breakdown, and I know we mentioned sports science element a little bit ago, and I know you and I have discussed that at length in the past. It sounds like you do a really good job of blending the mechanical model with the neurophysiological model in everything that you do. A lot of times when I talk with coaches, they seem to kind of swing one way or the other, where everything is very heavy on the mechanics side, the force outputs, and so on that way, and others very heavily lean into the neurophysiological side where it's, hey, it's very ecological dynamics or dynamic systems theory driven. It's very driven by the physiology, the recovery scores and all these other factors that everyone is obsessed with measuring right now. It sounds like for you in general with beach volleyball and indoor to an extent as well, you just kind of blend all of that together and balance both instead of going to one end of the spectrum or the other.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a time and place that you can, maybe favor one side over the other, like, if you're dealing with a return to play, if you're managing a certain athlete, whatever it may be, but at the end of the day, we're trying to develop these players, and they're here to play a sport, so the last thing I wanna do is go to a coach and say, "Hey, such and such needs to do less practice today because they had a low recovery." If they have a low recovery, then it's just, "Oh, check-in is warranted." I've seen athletes go into NCAAs on championship Sunday and have under a 10% recovery and play the absolute game of their life. These kids can do some crazy things, and yes, it might not be the most ideal situation, but sometimes, kinda like we talked about earlier, things happen, and it's not gonna be the most perfect situation, but if the athlete is safe and we can continue to make positive progressions, then yeah, like, let's go.
Shifting gears a little bit here. You mentioned how you also work on the internship side, coordinating that and working with interns that way. And I know a lot of them obviously want to be where you are someday that way. What kind of qualities and characteristics do you look for in a S&C intern or someone who's working through their exercise science degree, wants to make it, wants to be the next D1 strength coach that way? What kind of qualities and attributes set them up for success long term versus things that maybe don't matter as much?
So I actually kind of fell into the role. The guy who is the intern coordinator, he was actually my intern coordinator. And so when I came back, I had went up to him and I was like, "Hey, I would love to help you and be a part of this program and just help develop these young coaches because you guys helped me so much. I got my job at USC being that was my first full-time job just because of what I learned from you guys as an intern and a GA. And, he was very on board with me helping out, and then, him and his wife had a baby, so he's actually been on leave for a little bit, and I've kind of stepped in and taken over a lot of the responsibilities of kind of what the curriculum looks like and what the day-to-day or a week-to-week flow looks like. But I would say just across the board, if I'm looking at intern or GA candidates, I want someone who's coachable and willing to take feedback and implement it rather than someone who kinda thinks they already know everything. I know I don't know everything, and an intern and a GA is not expected to know everything either. I want you to be able to take feedback and then be able to create action from that feedback to continue to progress. Because at the end of the day, I'm learning as much from them, hopefully, as they're learning from me. It's not a one-way street. So, I would say being coachable, but also not being afraid to take initiative with things. So, if you see a coach that maybe is run super thin with their workload or whatever they have going on, just asking them, "Hey, how can I help? How can I be involved to maybe take something off your plate or learn something from you?" And then just constantly asking, "Hey, is there anything you need?" That's always the best question to ask. If you leave the facility without checking in with coaches of if they need anything, it's a big, big tell if you're actually in it or not.
And I think those are such great points. Like, I think a lot of people have these horror stories of internships in the past where it was 12 to 14-hour days, which they're still long, don't get me wrong, but there was like almost a fear factor in those days where it was like you were scared to go to the bathroom because like you didn't want to miss something. You were scared to like literally like step out to like grab a drink of water or a snack real quick because you were afraid you were going to miss something. It's like you just had to be locked in 24/7. And now you still need that, but I feel like there's a little bit more of like a actual human element to modern internships, for lack of a better way to put it that way, which is huge. But I think to your point, having that ability to balance it a little bit is also like what's the phrase? With great power comes great responsibility. Like just because you don't have to be there for 14, 16 hours every single day, just because you don't have to literally have fear of like stepping out to like hit the bathroom real quick, because that's literally stories I've gotten from so many strength coaches in the past during their internships. It's like that doesn't mean you can just kind of cakewalk through it. You still have to put the time in, show initiative, put forth the effort. And also, one of the big things you mentioned that I fell victim to myself is understanding that you don't know everything. Because I know when I graduated school and I got two fancy degrees, I was like, well, shoot, like I'm set. Life is good, right? Like we got the paper, let's go. And it took about a month for me to realize, like, once you start to see that stuff doesn't always follow the textbook, once you start to realize, like, you can't just, like, figure everything out instantly, sometimes there needs to be a little bit more of an analysis, a little bit more of a multidisciplinary conversation around things, and you have to realize that, like, it's really a high performance team element, not just one person captaining the ship, and you have to realize that you're gonna be called to play many different roles within that team, and you have to be willing to step back or step forward as needed. I think once you get into those moments where, for lack of a better way to put it, shit just hits the fan, then you realize like, oh, this is what it has to be. It's not just me going, going, going. It's also learning that you have to step back and take other roles at times, and learning when you're over your head and you need to tap out and ask for help, assistance, and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I've definitely from, like, my own experiences, you come to think that, okay, strength and conditioning, like, it's the greatest thing in the world, like, we mean the most in a program, which it's not the case, like, we're a supporting role. So as an intern and a GA, sometimes you don't realize maybe what your puzzle piece is in the grand scheme of things, and it takes some of those trial and error experiences to gain understanding that we are an extension of the sport coach, and we are a supporting role. So what does that look like you said, when do you need to step forward, when do you need to step back? And it's gonna look different for every team that you're associated with in terms of your involvement and maybe your voice with the program. So I think those are things that, interns and GAs don't really know about when they go to take their first full-time role, especially if you've been working with a team that is maybe only in the weight room. They don't really run conditioning sessions in that. It's kind of hard to understand the full scope of things at times. So those have been conversations that we've had, just trying to give our interns and GAs more context of what a real life scenario looks like outside of just the weight room, what it looks like traveling and things like that. I've been very fortunate to have some great interns and GAs since I've been here, and I've been able to give them opportunities to travel with my out of season team when I've been traveling with my in season team. And that's not a situation given lightly. They have to definitely earn it. I'm somewhat of a control freak with that kind of stuff and just making sure that things are done appropriately and making sure that my team is serviced at a high level. I'm not going to send anybody. I have to actually trust that you're going to do a good job. So if they're able to kind of prove that to me before sending them off, then yeah, I'll put my name on you and I'll let you go. One of the I guess, kind of biggest lessons that I learned from a previous intern coordinator at USC that I worked with, he had said, "When you complete your internship, the athletes should be asking the next semester where you are." They wanna know, like, where's Johnny? Where's the intern Johnny that was with us last semester? That's kind of how you know as an intern, you made an impact and you did a good job if the kids are continued to ask for you. Every day is a job interview. I mean, people hear that one all the time as well, and it's 100% true. If someone's gonna call me and ask me, "Hey, we've got someone who interned for you looking for a GA position here. What do you have to say?" I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. I'm gonna shoot them straight what I think. And if I don't remember you because you didn't make a big enough impact while you were here, then I'm probably gonna say that.
One of the elements that I've found, at least on the physical therapy side, that can really make or break someone's success in the profession, in my opinion, is the communication element. And you've mentioned that several times as you were talking about S&C interns as well. And I don't know if it was the pandemic or the whole smartphone thing, because I feel like every time I go out for coffee now, without fail, I see two people sitting at the same table literally just typing away and not actually talking to one another. It's beyond me, or I don't know what variable or factor it is that is contributing to this, but I feel like we've lost our art of communication, and we've lost our ability to literally just sit down and have an authentic conversation with someone. And a lot of people need to literally like chat GPT script and prep for a conversation that should just be kind of a natural occurring day-to-day thing that way. What kind of communication elements have you seen really set interns apart, or what kind of things do you offer as advice to interns who are like, you know what, I know I need to be better about this, but I don't even know where to go because that's not even taught in the curriculum, I feel.
Yeah, I feel like one of the most common things you'll hear from a full-time strength coach talking to an intern is, "You need to ask more questions, you need to ask more questions, you need to try to be more involved," but I know speaking personally for me, when I was an intern and even when I was a GA at times, like, I just didn't know what questions to ask. Like, I didn't even know where to start. I didn't know what was interesting to me. So it wasn't until things were placed in front of me that probed questions that made me ask questions. So, kind of taking that reflection into account when I communicate with my interns now, I'm asking them probing questions. Like if I see them on the floor and let's say we're doing power cleans and trap bar deadlift today, and before the session I tell them, "Hey, I want you to coach this up." But during the session, they're not really coaching it up. I'll go up to them after the session, and instead of getting frustrated with them that they didn't do what I asked, I'll ask them, "Hey, do you understand how this movement is supposed to be completed? Do you understand, what coaching cues to use if you see this occurring?" And what I've kinda noticed is sometimes they don't know. They know what it should feel like personally for them because they know how to perform the movement, but they don't know how to put it in words. So then it just creates a conversation of helping them learn to develop how to find coaching cues and essentially be a coach. Part of the battle is learning to do it yourself. If you learn to do it yourself, then you can translate that into words once you kind of figure out how to do it. So instead of getting upset, it's more so just looking at it from a different lens and a different mindset to open these conversations. And instead of expecting them to come to me, I'll go to them. And instead of giving them all the answers, I'll ask them probing questions to kind of get them to think about it. Through our education process as well. We have a week of education, and then there'll be an assignment associated with it. So the following week, the interns will present on an assignment. They get about 15 minutes. They have to stand up in front of us and put a slideshow up on the TV, go through it. But it's just practicing different presentation skills, teaching them how to build out effective PowerPoints that look visually, and are understand they're easy to understand, rather than just filled with clutter and things like that. When they apply for a GA position or down the road when they apply for a job, we want them to have those presentation skills and be able to think critically about questions that we have for them based on certain scenarios. So that's kind of how our communication process has looked here.
And I feel like that ultimately helps them develop their own frameworks for it. Instead
Yeah.
of just telling them, "This is what you do," it's, "How do you want this to be done?" Right?
Yeah.
And you have
Well,
to kinda
we give them kind of principles so that way they can formulate their own decisions. So instead of us just telling them the roadmap, everyone's roadmap is different, but we should all kind of fall back on the same principles. So we'll give them principles and then they can develop their own kind of roadmap.
and as you alluded to as well, it's a lot easier to grasp those principles when you're actively practicing them day in and day out. And I know one of our mutual friends, I believe, Chipper, recently shared this on a great podcast with Tyler Bitton about the importance of the S&C coach or the physical therapist or the AT, anyone working with athletes to be involved in practicing what they preach that way. And I know that's something that you're very adamant about because every morning when I open my Instagram, I'm like, there's Madison's workout again at like 4 or 5 AM or something like that. How have you been able to kind of translate your own workouts into the work that you do with interns, with beach volleyball, indoor volleyball, and so on that way? Because at least for myself, I know if I didn't work out to the extent that I do in the mornings, my effectiveness as a clinician would be next to zero.
Yeah. By the end of the day, I'm way too cooked to do any form of strength training. The closest thing I can do is maybe go for like an easy long run. But even that can be kind of challenging at the end of a workday. I actually do the girls program. So anything that you're seeing me post, 9 times out of 10, it's what the athletes are doing that day. Part of it is for me to figure out how I want the room to be set up, maybe if we're starting a new phase. The other part of it is I want to know how it feels. So I usually do the beach volleyball program, just because our entire fall, we have so much building time and we train extremely hard. So, I wanna see how that program feels before I implement it with the girls. Obviously, I don't have the volleyball component of practice, but I still run a lot and I train for different things. So that's quote unquote my practice, and I can kind of see how my body feels from the lift with whatever training session I have going on that day or how it lines up with the goals that I'm associated with myself. Um, Obviously, it looks different at different points of the year with us kind of being towards the middle slash down slope of our season. I won't stick with doing their in-season program. I'll flip the script for me and do a little bit more strength training because I don't need to peak for NCAAs, they do. So I'll go back to a little bit of a strength block, before diving into indoors, summer training program with them. So again, the girls will see what I'm doing before they come in. I always post it before they come in the weight room, so it kinda saves me a little bit of work. They all follow me, so they can see their lift before they come in. They kinda know what's coming that day rather than me having to talk about it from scratch.
And you mentioned that concept of training for something. What are you currently training for, Madison? You know, is there like a couple's high rocks in the future for you and Steg, or is it like marathon season, or like what is the future gonna hold here?
Definitely not a high rocks. Those do not seem fun to me at all. Um, so no, not that. I am training for another half marathon. I would like to run one up in the Northeast. So trying to convince Steg to run that one with me.
I cannot wait to see how that goes. I think that'll be absolutely incredible, and obviously there'll be a little deadlift party come May as well, I'm sure.
Yeah, he'll probably partake in that one. I don't really like lifting in front of people, so we'll see.
I respect that. I tend to be the same myself. I'm like, I need early morning when there's no one else in the gym.
Yeah.
Get in, get it done, and get out. Because I mean, let's be real. No one wants to see the workout faces. They are absolutely atrocious. I don't need anyone seeing that. We just got to get in, get it done, and get out. So no, that's incredible. I realize we discussed a lot of different things today. We talked a lot about the volleyball side of things, the internship side of things, and so on that way. Is there anything we missed as we were chatting today, or anything else that you really wanted to get into that we haven't yet?
I mean, I don't think there's anything too crazy that we didn't touch on. I think the adaptability piece kinda touches the points across all of those domains that we touched on today. Um, Part of that's learned from being an intern and a GA, part of that's learned from just different environments that you place yourself in and not really being scared to go through those environments. I know for me personally, I dabbled in the tactical realm quite a bit, as I was coming up through my journey, and it definitely helped me a lot, just learn to adapt on the fly and be comfortable in a chaotic environment. So when I'm on the beach with these girls and we're literally warming up in the dark because the sun's not up yet, I can remain calm in a situation and provide ease to them. If someone forgot their unit at the hotel, it's okay, no worries. Here's how we're going to solve the problem. If food is running late because wherever we ordered it from while we were traveling canceled the order, okay, that's fine. Here's what we're going to do instead. So, the adaptability piece from all of those experiences you get from being an intern and a GA and being in those hard environments, so I think anytime you can dive into that stuff, the better.
In Madison, for people who want to find out more about you online and that sort of thing, where can they find you at?
I'm mainly on Instagram, Madison C. Peele. That's kind of my main account. I do have LinkedIn there, my LLC as well, and I'll post some things on that from time to time, mainly just kind of my training and stuff like that, and sometimes little fun facts, but that's about it.
That's awesome. We'll link to that in the description below. That way, if you didn't quite catch it, you can just click there and see everything Madison is up to, keep up to date with all of her workouts and all that sort of thing. All of that will be there. Madison, I'm so glad we were finally able to do this. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Happy to be here.